All right, let's watch this fun video about how Canada has gone to the shitter over the last 10 years under liberals. For those that don't know, liberals and just liberals generally are coming under a lot of fire recently. Everything should be better.
You've probably heard this term, the lost liberal decade. Here's a quick review. Healthcare wait times are nearly twice as bad as they were in 2015. Back then, the average wait time for surgery was 18.3 weeks. Now it's 30. Also, the doctor shortage has never been worse, with millions of Canadians.
Some of these headlines are pretty wild. So Canada has a population of 40 million people, and this headline says 10 million people will soon lack access to primary care. So 1/4 of all Canadians will lose access to primary care. This seems like fear-mongery. They're a bit tabloid, pretty right-wing in my opinion. Well, this is a whole video of shitting on the left, so I can see that being true, but maybe they deserve it.
Also, people keep dying in emergency rooms. That didn't used to be a thing.
I mean, do people not die in emergency rooms all the time? Is that not a part of being in an emergency room, that people are there with such imminent danger that they may just die? And even if you have perfect healthcare, they're going to die anyway? Is this a good point? We do need more doctors, but crime isn't up as far as I know, for example. Well, there's we need more doctors, and then there's a quarter of our population doesn't have access to a doctor. You know, these are two very different statements. One is a complete crisis, and the other one is like, yeah, it'd be nice to not have to wait as long to have doctors. I'd have thought a lot of people would die in emergency rooms, right? And here there's 2 people that died in a year in an emergency room. That sounds pretty good. Obviously, very sad for the 2 people, but...
Millions of Canadians having no access to primary care. Also, people keep dying in emergency rooms. That didn't used to be a thing. Crime is higher everywhere and for everything.
Higher everywhere for everything. There's not even a small niche crime that didn't go down. Like, I don't know, some crime to do with crypto because there was a crypto crash at some time and people weren't bothered to do the crime anymore, so even though nothing else changed with the law enforcement. There's not a single thing. These seem like 2 powerfully sweeping statements to be true, right? The answer to this is to invest healthcare. Well, I've got a solution for this.
This is a crime severity index maintained by Statistics Canada. This dip here is right around when the Liberals take power. We now have way more gun violence than before. We're now a world center for auto theft. We have a problem with crime tourism now, and an extra 200 people are now being murdered each year as compared to 2015 trends.
I don't know about you guys, but if I had to guess a country with 40 million people, how many people get murdered each year? I'm going to guess at least 10,000. 874? That's a really low number. This is quite inspiring and reassuring to me that the answer is this low. 874. Pretty sure that happens daily in most US cities. You mean 874 homicides? Mr. M giving me a link. List of countries by homicide rate by the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime. So there's Canada. It's in the pale yellow. Wait, so there's 0 homicide in China? Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe China should take over the world. Fuck the EU. Okay, let's do it by count. Okay, so Nigeria is a winner, followed by Brazil and India. Now, India has an insane, obviously high population. Brazil too has a lot of people. I forget the exact amount. 200 million. Okay, that's actually less than I thought. Obviously India with the big 1 billion. So we do it by rate. Turks and Caicos Islands. British flag, I understand. Jamaica. I imagine Canada's not going to be on the top of either number. Okay, so in some countries you get as much as 44,000 homicides. No homicide here in Bing, Chile. The government of the People's Republic of China does not release exact unified statistics on crime rates and the rate of criminal offending. Scarce official statistics released are the subject of much academic debate due to allegations of statistical fabrication, lying, underreporting, and corruption. Well, that's why I'm wondering, given that you've just said that, here you've got a bunch of countries with no data, but China, I guess the official releases is that there's a lowest amount of crime compared to all the other countries in the world. And Australia as well. Look at you guys go. Good job. Yeah. Japan, Indonesia, Malaysia, Philippines. Way less African countries in the top 10 than I would guess. Obviously, there is a problem of actually counting. Just how many countries with really low rape statistics, one might assume is a bit higher. So that's probably an issue. US, but this is again the count. All right, so yeah, at least 10,000 is what I would have guessed for Canada, and it gets 800. So we go down to here, and there's Canada, which is as much as France, except France has more people. France has about 60 million. 68. The French have been popping off. 69 even. Canada, even with its increased homicide rate, is still one of the safest places to not be murdered. Crime went up after COVID worldwide because people were pushed into poverty. Yeah, I mean, that's obviously true, yeah. The COVID effect. But this is over a 10-year period he's talking about.
200 people are now being murdered each year as compared to 2015 trends. All the while, we're emptying out prisons. The economy has remained stagnant.
Yes,
even as
less murder is good. That's a great takeaway. It took us 8 hours, but we came to a good place. Does this include vehicular homicide? Because in France, they drive tiny, slow cars. Oh, it's only the cars that stop France from doing it, huh? In Canada, they ride freedom trucks that can really do some damage. Well, it's intentional homicide, so that would include vehicular murder, yeah.
Everyone else gets richer. Here's a chart showing per capita GDP growth among developed nations over the last 10 years. Way at the bottom.
All right, I mean, that's not great that Canada's GDP growth is 1.4%, but let's just remember that this is not indicative of the average person earning that amount of money. America has had a great economic spike, and what was it, like 90% of that money went to the top 1%, and the general people who have been making more money for the country as a general trend haven't seen any of that money. So this is misleading, but it is still a sign of growth for the country, so you can still complain when it's low. And poor Luxembourg down there on that minus 0.9%. Is this the only country in the world that had minus GDP per capita? Does this include gang violence? It would do, yeah. Any intentional homicide. Which is wild, right? 900 people, not even 900 people murdered in a year, and Canada's doing great.
That's Canada. The only one worse than us is Luxembourg. Just last year, Statistics Canada estimated that if the Canadian economy had simply stuck to the growth rates of 2015...
The idea that, and I'm not suggesting anyone do this for clout or popularity or infamy, but the idea that you could kill like 500 people in Canada and make it into this guy's YouTube video because you would have doubled Canada's homicide rate for that year is mind-boggling, right? That's just crazy. We're talking about numbers that a single person could influence. Don't do it, obviously.
We'd all be an extra $4,200 richer per year. Debt has basically doubled.
Okay, yeah, so this isn't true, right?
That if the Canadian economy had simply stuck to the...
Don't get any ideas, Grimmy.
...growth rates of 2015...
You would watch my stream so hard for that 15 minutes of fame. I'd have so many viewers. Okay, maybe not fans. It'll probably be people telling me that I'm an animal. If the economy had stayed where it was in 2015, we'd all be earning an extra $4. Yeah, so this is like on a projected GDP growth. That doesn't necessarily go to the people. It could go to the people, the average person. But they always frame it as GDP growth equals an extra $4,200 in your pocket, when obviously that's not what's been happening in many countries like the USA. Find Iceland in that statistic? Oh, dang. Four people in Iceland? So there's only 400,000 people in Iceland. And yeah, only 4 people got murdered. So it's 1 per 100,000 people, which is how they're giving us this. Damn. Imagine just living in a country where it's an absolute absurdity that anybody murders another person. Americans don't have any idea what that means. Let's see the damage United Kingdom. So we do have gang violence. 684. What? That's so low. There's no way it's that low. Not even 1,000? 680? What? My eyes have been opened. Oh, Grimmy, we don't have guns in the UK. That's true. If we did have guns instead of knife crime, then things might be a bit different. The US, oh my god. 20,000? Before I'd be like, yeah, that sounds about right. But yeah, compared to all the other countries, homicide is just not a thing. Imagine being on like the homicide department of the Icelandic police force. You just sit there all day, just watching pigeons or whatever they have in Iceland. Watching Fox News confuse you with Greenland. Yeah, I mean, you got countries like Monaco with no people in it and no murders. Very rich country with no people. They kill more in schools than we do in the whole country. Unironically, true. 3. They're not ready for a conflict, guys. They have 3 homicides a year. Leave them alone.
We'd all be an extra $4,200 richer per year. Debt has basically doubled. It was $612 billion when the Liberals took power. Now it's $1.4 trillion. Military recruitment has dropped
that's
off
not great. But having more debt mostly just makes it more difficult to borrow money. As long as people believe in the economy, debt doesn't seem to matter. Debt is pervasive and probably meaningless. You guys seem afraid to just tell me how it is, huh? You're just giving me basically riddles.
Military recruitment has dropped off a cliff to the point where the Canadian Armed Forces is so short of personnel that more than half of their ships, planes, and vehicles do not have people to maintain them.
Why does the Canadian entity need a military? Can somebody explain this to me, please? Who are they fighting? Who are they scared of? Who are they worried about? Or is it just an obligation to the USA? Right? Because apparently Iceland can get away with no active military. It just seems like Canada is perfectly placed in the world with this giant colossal beast of America underneath it. And any enemies that they have would have to go very close to America to the point that they wouldn't allow it. And if they ever do anything to Canada, then, America will intervene. If Russia comes in from the west and invades Canada, America will do something about it. So why does Canada need a military? Canada has an army to save Europe from other European countries during the World War. You've not been following the news lately, huh? The USA is threatening to invade. Right, so what is Canada even remotely going to do if the USA decides to do that? Their defense was never going to be dudes with guns or tanks or drones or anything else. I think that it's fair to say Canada would get steamrolled and it would be best to surrender immediately rather than put up any resistance. Everybody thought Ukraine would get steamrolled. So we're all under the belief that Canada needs a military because it needs to defend against the USA. Is this a legitimate concern? Canada's military is just to do US and NATO's imperialism? The Geneva Convention was in part down to Canadian atrocities. That's the first time I'm hearing about it. They're dangerous motherfuckers. And let's just all agree that Ukraine was able to resist the Russian forces because Europe and America has helped them. And as Boanan points out, Ukraine is very close to Europe, so any supplies that they need can get there quickly. Canada is on its own. If US wants to invade Canada, it's getting no help from anyone, right? It just seems bonkers that 2 years ago I would have said that Canada and the USA were best friends, to the point that I just called Canada premium American citizens, where they get all the benefits of being an American without any of the downsides. And that's still what I think. And also the idea that Canada exists at the mercy of the US and effectively is just a part of the US. Like, is there anything controversial in what I'm saying here? If the US invaded, Canadians would throw a kegger, turn on hockey, and wait until the Americans got bored and went home. Canada and USA are still close, don't let Trump fool you. Yeah, I don't think that's untrue at all. I love Canada, but they're no pushover. I think Canada has an absolute allegiance either way to America. It just, yeah, I mean, it still seems unfathomable. If Canada becomes the 51st state of America, all that would happen is the standard of living in Canada goes slightly down and the rest of America goes slightly up, right? What else would change? At the mercy is a strong wording for we live peacefully now. Well, yeah, that's true. But like the idea is like, if anything, if there was ever a threat to Canada, it's America that will save them. Just like we found out that Bhutan is a country that lives at the mercy of India, right? It just hammers the point home that if anything bad happens, it's actually one other country that's going to do all the heavy lifting in protecting it. Nobody thought things would get so stupid this quickly, true. More deaths, probably more gun violence, yeah. Why would they be the 51st state? Wouldn't they be 5 states at least? If Canada became the 51st state, they're going to have to do some serious gerrymandering to keep the Republicans in the running. That's true. Yeah, just like if Scotland left the United Kingdom, then it becomes a lot more conservative because they will vote not the Labour Party, but something that's very similar to the Labour Party. Shock him. I'm not going to shock my cat. This is not that stream.
Whoever said that, you know what's coming.
Yeah, Emily will up the homicide statistic for anybody that threatens our cats. Let's just put it this way.
Unalive is coming.
Unalive? Yes. Unalive. Shock both? Well, Emily and the cat, then I'm definitely getting unalived. I did Google this question on why Canada has a military, and the answer generally was Canada has military obligations to NATO with this. I mean, Talden says it's an optional 2% GDP. So 2% of your, let's say money goes to the military, which is obviously 2% that could be immediately spent on other things like healthcare, etc. But they still have this military, and my understanding is that it's because America wants them to have a military, right? You don't get to coast completely free off of America. You have to do some of the bad stuff with us is the understanding, the underlying statement. But this general idea that Canada has any real sovereignty when it has this behemoth of a country underneath it, which is culturally the same, but just has a higher standard of living, seems pretty crazy to me, no?
You think the US is a higher standard of living?
No, Canada has a higher standard of living. That's why I call Canadians premium Americans. It's similarly situated to a country like Norway or Sweden, Finland kind of thing, where these are peaceful countries. They do have militaries and stuff, but they're generally peaceful countries that then just chip in to the more sinister deeds, the more like violent deeds of the West. But generally they can avoid that side of things. Part of the hubbub in Canada is actually people in the central provinces and rural areas absolutely hating the political ideology of Toronto. Is that true, Canadians? Look, you can know for yourself that USA is going to rescue you militarily if anything happens, but you cannot admit that openly and have no military at all. Well, that's what Iceland has done, right? We found out today, this was news to me, they have a military agreement with the US that they will look after them, right? I live in Toronto and I hate the political ideology of Toronto. And is the political ideology of Toronto extremely left-wing, or is it the opposite? Our mayor is an idiot. I think Canada is so aligned we'd turn on our own populace on behalf of America to prevent something worse. Increasing taxes, renaming streets, universities. It's that badger in a tube. There he is. You got tubed, bro.
He chewed himself on the
Here come the allegations that I don't shock my cat, but I tube him. Even more sinister punishment. What's this? He's confused. He has no idea why he's in a tube. Untubed, Badgie. Violence. He beats me, you see? Pet him. Cruel. Yeah. It's over. One and only political stream. I got the cat pat. How could this happen to him? So she is the mayor and she's increasing taxes, renaming streets and universities. Is this renaming them because they're somehow tied to slave stuff or something? I know that that's been an issue in America. We've had prominent figures who then turned out to be slave owners, and obvious difficulty of whether or not you should keep their name because they are, historical figures for their time, etc. More renaming things named after people tied to the founding of Canada and the residential school system for Native Americans. So that's what they want to rename them to. What were they originally named? I was actually banned by a Canadian streamer because I pointed out in the chat that they never found any mass graves of children on former residential school sites. It was a big hoax a few years ago in Canada. Oh, I'm just gonna have to take your word for that. I don't know what to say on that otherwise, but okay. So there's a whole thing going on with that. Mass graves of children on former residential school sites. Jesus. That was a hoax? Not a hoax? Oh god, here we go.
Handed by about 900 members. Now it's 16,000. Life expectancy has gone down. It was 81.9, now it's 81.5. And a sustained dip in life expectancy has basically never happened before, save for blips during
But you guys see what I mean? Even in a video that's talking about how shit Canada has become, 800 homicides in Canada, 30,000 in the US, the life expectancy has gone down. It's now 81.6. In America, it's 74. Whereas, like, culturally, these kind, I don't think a Canadian and an American have much of a difficulty understanding each other or getting along with each other. Do you get what I mean? But, like, Canada is always better. They're like, the country's turned to shit. We're getting close to American levels of standard of living. Is he going to blame the COVID dip on liberals? He does mention the COVID dip. This is over 10 years, right? Oh, over 20 years even. But yeah, there's a huge dip there, and then it goes back up. Let's see if he mentions how it is. Move your ugly face so we can see the stats. That's a good point. You didn't need to say ugly, but that's a good point. There it is. So America is 74.1, when Canada is 81.6. So 7.5 years more, which is quite significant in terms of life expectancy. Be nice. That's my oldest sub, Mav. This is what I get. My strongest soldier is like this. I'm trying to sub, but your face is too ugly to make me press the button. Thanks, Kenny. Canada is America with a top hat, isn't it? That's what I'm saying. It looks like premium America. You get all the benefits of America with a higher standard of living. And you can go to America whenever you like. Because obviously there's a lot more going on in America. It's a lot more interesting of a country in terms of how much you can do and see. Not to say that Canada doesn't have plenty to do and see. I just love that there's this video talking about how bad Canada's getting. And it's still much, much, much better than the US for its people. Crime rate, healthcare, life expectancy. I guess America's got Canada beat on military, but I really don't see this as something people give a shit about. Sticky, are you mad that the Canadian government, or Canada as a country, is unable to get enough recruits into its military? Is this a problem that you spend your nights worrying about? Groceries are way too expensive compared to the USA. I worry about them taking 40% of my income, and if I work harder, they take more. Yeah, no, and I get that, right? Same with like Scandinavian countries. The taxes are very high, and everyone feels that. At the end of the day, Sticks, if you lived in the USA, you would have a 7-year less life expectancy. Crime would be higher. You're more likely to die from all of these things. It's not like your tax money isn't being spent on something that's making like a difference in your country. Yeah, I mean, healthcare's gone much worse, and if this statistic is true, which I kind of doubt because it's so crazy,
Healthcare wait times are nearly twice as bad as they were in 2015. Back then, the average wait time for surgery was 18.3 weeks. Now it's 30. Also, the doctor...
It says 10 million will soon lack access to primary care, and that hasn't happened yet. It's a prediction, and I wonder if the prediction, it just goes like this, where it's like, yeah, let's just ramp up that line real good so it says 10 million, which is a quarter of the Canadian population. Because that's like a crisis. That's a number, like 1 in 4 people can't access a doctor, like a GP. That's something you'd expect from a really stunted, struggling country, not Canada. It's taking me 3 months to get an MRI on my arms. A fucking MRI. NHS is fucked. Yeah, I mean, I have a good friend that used to live with, and she works for the NHS and has done for like a decade now, and she's telling me plenty of things about the NHS which aren't so inspiring.
This is a crime severity index maintained by
this does look really
Canada.
bad.
This dip here is right around when the Liberals take power.
So the Liberals take power and crime skyrockets. There might be an explanation for this, the way that they define crime, or that they're catching more criminals or something, but that generally it seems pretty hard to argue with such a line. This is one powerful line. Canada's healthcare is overstated, doesn't cover anything above the shoulders, and varies by province too much.
We have a problem with crime tourism now, and an extra 200
Crime
people
tourism.
center for auto theft.
So these are, I assume, people from America, perhaps Florida, who come to Canada to commit crimes and then go back to the US after they're done. I know a guy like that. Hey, Grim, I feel targeted. Stop it. Yeah, I don't know any American immigrants that went to Canada to commit crime. 3 times more likely to get killed deliberately by another person in America, which isn't, it's not something you can ignore. Mental health care in Canada is non-existent. That does seem to be a worldwide problem for sure. That's sad to hear. Maisie tried to kill herself at 13 years old and they didn't do shit for her. Yeah. I mean, like, the idea of like doing anything about mental health issues, especially after COVID, it seems pretty bonkers. You would hope it would be Canada of all countries that would take that kind of stuff seriously and actually do something.
The economy has remained
Does any country take mental health seriously? Yeah, I don't think so, right? At least we're at like a stage where we acknowledge that they exist, like mental health problems exist. We still don't do anything about it, but we're not like, oh, just toughen up. Like Canny's generation's like, there's no such thing as mental health. Just toughen up, forget about it, walk it off. That's the kind of sentiment. But in the modern age, we're like, yeah, I can see you're very troubled. You're suffering in a big way. Good luck. There's not much being done. Obviously, there are systems in place, but they don't do it. Man up, libtard. Exactly. Bunch of wards and shit before, now nothing. I mean, generally, this video leads me to believe that at least a lot has gone wrong since the libs came to power in Canada. Like, it does look like it to be the case. That's why I was hoping some Canadians would be like, well, actually, no, it's not this bad, or like maybe things have gotten better. It hasn't happened.
Gets richer. Here's a chart showing per capita GDP growth among developed nations over the last 10 years. Way at the bottom is Canada, the only one.
That's a general point I attribute, Talden, to America generally. America has the best everyone in terms of the top in the field. So they'll have the best engineers and the best politicians and the best scientists and the best doctors, the best universities. But like, this is a small amount of those things for the population of America. So even those people exist, the majority of people don't know or feel that. Yeah, if you're in the 1%, you're going to get the very best the world has to offer, obviously. But otherwise, you're pretty lackluster in terms of what you get, which is why like you'll get a country that's much less rich than America, but the average person gets a lot better treatment in Canada, in Sweden, and other countries. And that's why it's often confusing, because like you have Ivy League universities in America, but then that's not translated to what every American college student gets, like university student, obviously. Recently, I had to go to the hospital and was able to get treatment and a CAT scan right away. I'll have to have surgery and I hope I don't have to wait too long for it. It's also just this complete feeling of helplessness. Like you really need help and you're being put on a list that's like months or years to get anything done. I can see why this is a huge point of frustration and that will like drive voters to want change. Recently, most of the top universities are Chinese. Yeah. And I think not only is that true, but like the Chinese like to go to top universities around the world and just get a lot of good education from the very best universities and then come home with a really good education. And then their own universities are also doing really well. But again, like I imagine that the 1 billion people in China are not seeing these top universities for the majority of the people involved. It's a trick. It's like saying the US has the best mathematicians, and when you agree, they act like that means your local math teacher isn't a drunk that's failing at his job. Yeah. Say I'm disabled, I would get $1,100 a month. If I illegally come to Canada and sign up for the handouts, I get $2,300 a month for cell phone and housing. It's so ass backwards. Is that changing now with how the American government is treating immigration? Pretty hardcore in terms of immigration? Or is it the opposite? Canada saying we want to be not like America and open our borders up even more? I mean, Sticky, you appreciate this as being an immigrant yourself, right? Let's not mince words. You are an immigrant in Canada. They're not all bad, hey? I have a master's in materials science and industrial management, still learn more in 1 year at work than 5 years at university. Yeah, I mean, I hear this a lot. I'm sure that's true in many cases. But it's like in certain fields, obviously you have to get a foundational education in something like in sciences, right? Like you don't just go to the job and learn what you need because you need a strong foundation. That's obviously not the case in every degree. Badger disappeared, a true magic trick. Wait, was he behind me? Oh, there he is. That one's actually Bud. Canada has quite strict immigration laws. They do now, nothing compared to America. Sticky is one of the good ones. It's the one of the good ones argument, huh? In the last 6 months. Yeah, so yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like anytime America does something, my assumption is that Canada will kind of take inspiration. Because again, I don't truly believe in the sovereignty of Canada. I see it as a premium US. Isn't the issue that disabled Canadians aren't being given enough rather than immigrants being given too much? Would you say about that, Sticky? Would you say about that? You want immigrants to be able to function in society, you want them to contribute, and they need a good foundation for that. It's hard to argue with that. We are America 2.0. Oh, you're saying we now, huh? You've forsaken your American patriotism? You're now a Canadian? All right, I'll keep that in mind. Canada has too many legal immigrants. We let in 1.3 million people legally between 2016 to 2021. It's not sustainable. I don't know how Canada, of all places, has a housing crisis. 90% of your land is unused. Start fucking building. What Grim just said, that's my point. And I think a lot of people agree. There's definitely been a huge backlash to immigration, at least for the unskilled laborers, because I think Americans don't like to admit this in particular, but like a lot of the wealth, especially in terms of like the tech industry and stuff, is brain drain. The idea that you take people who are like 1 in a million from another country with like a great genius about them or just a great work ethic sometimes, they can get educated in their country, so the country takes the burden of educating them when they're not contributing anything back to society, and then America just flies them over and now they work for America and do a lot of great things and builds the country up. So brain drain is like this crazy immigration that greatly benefits a country, and I don't think even the most hardline anti-immigration guys are saying we don't want your most genius entrepreneurs and doctors and engineers and all of that. It's always about unskilled laborers. COVID really fucked the housing market in Canada. It's also hard to distinguish how much of the problems that countries are facing are to do with the government that happened to be in power at the time and how much is what they deserved because they had bad ideas. We're at a very difficult time in that regard to understand how much we should blame everyone for. They say the unskilled immigrants are called doctors and engineers. I am aware of the doctors and engineers meme. I am aware of this. Anytime an immigrant commits a crime, and the top comment is always like, how could these engineers and doctors do this? I'm going to become a doctor and start murdering people just for the meme. How is brain drain unethical? Do you think it's bad for the home country? Yeah, it is, of course. Yeah, like say you have a medical doctor, your country has to spend around 7 years, let's say, training them. Sometimes even more. When they train, then they specialize into like a brain surgeon. And then America offers them 3 times the salary, so they go to America and earn 3 times the salary. And the home country no longer has their trained brain surgeon, right? And in some cases, these people are very difficult to reproduce. And it's like, well, you're only going to get so many for every like round of training. And America can just come in and slurp them all up. I would ban critical professions from leading the country, like medical surgeons. I imagine that is in effect in some of these countries. Like I imagine maybe China would do such a thing. Who'd want to become a surgeon if you did that? Well, you'd still be very well paid in the grand scheme of your society if you end up at a very specialized, irreplaceable position. You just won't be paid nearly as much as the USA or other countries, just a European country in general, is going to offer. All the doctors in Canada are Indian now, but this is what I'm talking about, Sticky. This isn't a cause for concern for the Canadian people. This is a conquest that Canada has made over India, right? It's India that's suffering because of this and Canada that's benefiting. It's really twisted to be like, these dang immigrants coming in here with their extremely specialized skills and doing irreplaceable work could pull a USA and just tax expats. The double tax thing is crazy, right? Canada accepted almost 500,000 people in 1 year for a country of 35 to 40 million. That's not sustainable. Yeah. Politicians are morons 90%. I would say that generally they're very intelligent, but they're very amoral and psychopathic. That's an easier way to explain most politicians' actions. Some of them are generally just dum-dums. I'm not saying that you won't find a dum-dum that just stumbled his way into it, but generally, that's not the case. They're capable of great intellect. It's just they don't apply it for any moral value. Do more students go out for education and return than students educated domestically and leave? I mean, for a country like the USA, how many students do you think get educated domestically in the USA and then leave? Keep in mind that wherever they go to, if you're from the US, you're probably going to be paid less significantly. Even like going from the USA to like England or something like that, you're going to incur 30 to 70% less income just by making that decision.